If I told you that a ghost once stood trial for murder, you'd probably assume I'd completely lost my mind. But what if I told you that's almost exactly what happened? The events were so bizarre that they forced a British court to wrestle with a question nobody had ever imagined asking. Not whether ghosts exist, but what happens when an entire community believes they do. Imagine walking home one winter evening only to discover your neighbors have armed themselves against something they can't even prove is real. People refuse to leave their homes after dark. Children are rushed inside before sunset. Complete strangers swear they've all seen the same terrifying figure. Some say it floats, others insist it disappears into thin air. One witness claims the encounter nearly killed them through sheer terror. And before long, an ordinary London suburb becomes gripped by panic. The strangest part? By the time the fear finally ends, one innocent man is dead. A trial shocks the country, and the mystery refuses to disappear for more than 200 years. So what really happened in Hammersmith? Let's go back to the winter of 1803. At the beginning of the 19th century, Hammersmith was nothing like the busy part of London we know today. Once darkness fell, much of the area disappeared into near total blackness. There were no bright shop fronts, no floodlit streets, no security cameras. Only the glow of occasional oil lamps struggling against the cold winter fog. The silence itself could become unsettling. Every shadow looked larger than it really was. Every footstep sounded closer than it actually was. And in conditions like that, fear spreads incredibly quickly. It began with a single story. Someone claimed they had encountered a ghost near Black Lion Lane. The figure was described as unusually tall, dressed entirely in white, silent, motionless. It seemed almost to glow against the darkness. The witness fled. Neighbors listened. Most dismissed it as nonsense, until another person reported seeing exactly the same figure. Then another. Within days, conversations across Hammersmith revolved around only one subject: the ghost. As the stories spread, they became stranger. Some people claimed the figure drifted across the road without making a sound. Others insisted it vanished the moment anyone approached. Several witnesses said they chased it, only for it to disappear completely. One local woman reportedly became so terrified after an encounter that she collapsed shortly afterwards, with rumors claiming the shock contributed to her death. Whether that was true hardly mattered anymore. The fear had become real, and fear has an extraordinary way of changing how people see the world. Every unexplained noise became evidence. Every shadow became suspicious. Every stranger walking home after dark suddenly looked like they might not be human. Soon the rumors evolved into something much darker. Many believed they knew exactly whose ghost it was. According to local legend, a man who had taken his own life had been buried nearby. In 1803, suicide carried enormous stigma. Many genuinely believed those who died that way could never find peace. Their spirits were thought to wander the earth forever. To modern ears, it sounds unbelievable. But 2 centuries ago, this explanation felt completely plausible. The more people repeated it, the more convincing it became. Businesses began closing earlier. Residents avoided traveling after sunset. Parents refused to let children outside. Groups of neighbors started walking together for protection. Some even armed themselves. Not against thieves, not against highwaymen, against a ghost. It's difficult to imagine now, but Hammersmith had become a community preparing for battle against something nobody could prove existed. Then an even stranger detail emerged. Not everyone described the ghost the same way. Some insisted it was enormous. Others claimed it was no taller than an ordinary man. Some heard groans. Others heard complete silence. A few believed it attacked people. Others said it simply watched from a distance. Normally, contradictions like that would make people question the story. Instead, they made the legend grow. Everyone became convinced they had seen a different side of the same terrifying entity. By Christmas, panic had reached extraordinary levels. Among those determined to end the haunting was a customs officer named Francis Smith. Smith wasn't a police officer. He wasn't under orders, he simply believed someone needed to protect the neighborhood. So he volunteered to patrol the streets after dark, armed with a shotgun. Night after night, he searched for the mysterious figure. Nothing happened. The ghost never appeared. People began wondering whether the stories had finally come to an end. Then came the night of the 3rd of January, 1804. Just after 11 o'clock. Smith noticed someone approaching through the darkness. The figure wore white, exactly as witnesses had described. The shape moved silently along the road. Smith called out. No answer. He shouted again. Still nothing. Standing in the freezing darkness, he became convinced that after weeks of searching, he had finally found the Hammersmith Ghost. What happened over the next few seconds would become one of the most infamous moments in British legal history. Smith raised his shotgun, took aim, and fired. The figure collapsed instantly. There was no ghost, only a dying man. His name was Thomas Millwood. He was a 23-year-old bricklayer. He hadn't been haunting anyone. He hadn't been trying to frighten people. He had simply finished work and was walking home. The reason he was dressed in white was painfully ordinary. Bricklayers commonly wore white work clothes to stop lime and plaster ruining darker fabrics: white trousers, white shirt, white apron. Exactly the appearance terrified witnesses had spent weeks describing. The cruelest part of the story? This wasn't even the first time someone had mistaken him for the ghost. Friends and family had warned him. People were frightened. They begged him not to wear white after dark. Thomas laughed. He thought the rumors were ridiculous. He never imagined someone might actually shoot him. He died because he wore his work clothes home. News spread rapidly across London. People expected Francis Smith to be convicted of murder. After all, he admitted pulling the trigger. There was no dispute over who fired the fatal shot. But then the trial took an astonishing turn. Smith's defense wasn't that he hadn't fired. It wasn't self-defense. It wasn't an accident. He openly admitted believing that Thomas Millwood wasn't a man. He believed, with complete sincerity, that he had fired at a ghost. Today that sounds absurd, but remember, hundreds of people in Hammersmith already believed exactly the same thing. The courtroom suddenly faced an extraordinary legal question. If someone honestly believes something that isn't true, how responsible are they for the consequences? The judges recognized the danger immediately. If honest mistakes became a complete defense, where would it end? Could anyone escape responsibility simply by claiming they believed something impossible? Smith was eventually convicted of murder and sentenced to death. But public opinion wasn't so clear. Many people sympathized with him. He hadn't gone out intending to kill an innocent man. He believed he was protecting frightened neighbors. His sentence was later reduced to 1 year of hard labor, and a royal pardon spared his life. The case became one of the most important early legal examples of what happens when someone acts under an honest but mistaken belief. Law students still study it today. But perhaps the biggest mystery was never answered. Who or what had everyone actually been seeing? Some historians believe there never was a ghost at all. Instead, they point towards a local shoemaker who reportedly enjoyed frightening people by dressing in white. According to later accounts, he eventually admitted playing tricks on the neighborhood. If that's true, one man's idea of harmless entertainment triggered a chain of events that ended in a completely avoidable death. Others believe there wasn't a prankster, only panic. Psychologists have long understood that fear is contagious. When enough people expect to see danger, the brain begins finding it everywhere. A white horse in the distance, fog drifting across a churchyard, moonlight reflecting from laundry, an ordinary man walking home from work. Every sighting reinforces every other sighting, until nobody questions the story anymore. They only add to it. And then there are those who remain unconvinced by either explanation. Even today, occasional reports still surface claiming that a pale figure has been seen near the old locations linked to the haunting. Most people dismiss them immediately. Others quietly wonder whether the original witnesses really did see something that winter. We'll probably never know. But perhaps the greatest horror wasn't supernatural. It was human. A community became so convinced that evil walked its streets that reason slowly disappeared. Fear replaced evidence. Rumors became facts, and an innocent man never made it home. Thomas Millwood wasn't killed by a ghost. He wasn't killed by a monster. He was killed by belief. And that's why the Hammersmith Ghost remains one of Britain's most chilling mysteries. Not because anyone can prove a ghost existed, but because history can prove exactly what fear is capable of when enough people stop questioning what they think they know. So what do you think? Was the Hammersmith Ghost nothing more than mass hysteria? A cruel prank that spiraled beyond anyone's control? Or do you believe something unexplained really was stalking the streets of Hammersmith in the winter of 1803? Let me know your theory in the comments, because sometimes the scariest ghost stories aren't terrifying because they're supernatural. They're terrifying because they're true. If you enjoy true British horror stories like this one, subscribe to British Horror Files for more. And remember, some places never truly forget their past. Good night, and stay safe in the dark.